In this video, I'm going to show you etiquette mistakes that make anyone uncomfortable and that might be pushing people away from you without you even realizing it. Hi, I'm Juliana Santiago, and here I help you improve your image, your posture, and the impression you make in your daily life. And in today's video, I'm going to show you everyday attitudes and behaviors that are common, but that immediately make the other person uncomfortable. And many times, no one says anything, but everyone feels it. The first mistake is using your phone while you're talking to someone. This happens all the time, and I talk a lot about this here on the channel. The person is there talking, explaining something, telling a story, and you go and pick up your phone, reply to a message, take a quick look, even if it's just for a second. The message that comes across is that the phone is more important than the conversation you're having with the person. At work, in social gatherings with family, this creates immediate discomfort. If you can't give your attention at that moment, the most polite thing to do is to acknowledge your presence. It's one of the strongest ways to respond. The second mistake is interrupting someone while the other person is still speaking. A lot of people do this without realizing it, out of anxiety, excitement, or the urge to respond quickly. But interrupting communicates impatience, a lack of listening, and often a disregard for what the other person is saying. In everyday life, this happens a lot in meetings, in group conversations, or when someone is calmly explaining something and gets cut off right in the middle of a sentence. What? The third mistake is something that some people make and that can really bother the other person, which is moving your mouth along with the other person's speech as if you were mentally repeating what the other person is saying. This can be involuntary, but it causes a lot of discomfort. The person who is speaking feels like they're being imitated, watched too closely, or even judged during close conversations. This draws a lot of attention and completely breaks the flow of communication. Elegance is also in the small ways you control your body, so it's important to pay attention. The fourth mistake is trying to finish the other person's sentence. Many people do this thinking they're showing connection, attention, or even intimacy, but the effect is usually the opposite. When you finish someone else's sentence, it often feels rushed, like an interruption, or even embarrassing. This happens a lot when someone is thinking, organizing their thoughts, choosing their words, or talking about something more delicate in everyday life. This happens at work, when someone is explaining an important point and gets cut off in the middle of their idea, or in personal conversations. When someone is trying to understand what they're feeling and another person finishes their sentence for them, even if the intention is to help, the gesture takes away from the other person what the time to express themselves would bring, causing embarrassment. Giving the other person time is also a form of respect. Staying silent for a few minutes, waiting for the sentence to finish, is a very elegant way to show attention to another person. The fifth mistake is extremely rude, which is asking invasive questions. Questions like, are you pregnant? How much do you make? Do you want to have another child? How much did this cost? Where is this from? Really? When it comes with a tone of curiosity, these questions cross important boundaries of the other person's personal life in everyday situations. This happens all the time at family lunches, social gatherings, with friends, at work, or even with someone you just met. The person is caught off guard and put in an uncomfortable situation, as if she had to justify herself, explain herself, or answer something she doesn't want to share. Often, the person who asks the question doesn't even realize the impact, but the one who hears it rarely forgets. Elegance is knowing that not everything needs to be asked and that it's important for us to respect others. Not invading is also a form of respect. And if you're noticing how these small details can completely change the way you communicate and relate to people, take this opportunity to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because here I help you develop your posture to have a more elegant, conscious, and appropriate posture in your daily life. The sixth mistake is not maintaining eye contact while the other person is speaking. Speaking while looking to the sides, at your phone, at the surroundings, or at anything else immediately shows a lack of interest. Even if you are listening to the other person, they feel like they are not really being paid attention to. And it's important to emphasize that it's not about staring at the person the whole time or looking at them in an uncomfortable way. It's about showing everyday presence. This happens a lot in quick conversations, in meetings, in appointments, or in social gatherings. The person is there saying something important, and the listener keeps looking away the whole time as if they're searching for something more interesting around them. Balanced eye contact creates connection, builds trust, and makes the other person feel heard and respected. Sometimes that alone completely changes the quality of your conversation with the other person. Speaking too close, touching without intimacy, or leaning too much over the person creates almost immediate discomfort. This happens in very common everyday situations, in standing conversations, in lines, in work environments, or even at social gatherings. Sometimes the person gets too close to talk, puts their hand on the other person's arm, on their shoulder, or leans in as if they need the other person's space. Even if the intention is good, the effect is usually extremely negative. Each person has a personal space boundary, and that boundary needs to be respected, especially when there isn't much intimacy. Respecting another person's physical space is an unspoken rule of good coexistence and a clear demonstration of awareness and elegance. The eighth mistake is responding with irony or sarcasm disguised as a joke to phrases like, "Relax, it's just a joke," said after a comment. Uncomfortable comments do not cancel out the impact of what was said. Quite the opposite. They often make the situation even worse. This happens when someone makes an ironic comment, a jab, or a joke that exposes, belittles, or embarrasses the other person. And we notice that the atmosphere gets tense, the person tries to smooth things over and keeps saying it was just a joke. In everyday life, this shows up in conversations between friends, in work environments, and even at social gatherings. Even if the person is close to you, no. They leave with the feeling that they were disrespected. She feels like she has no room to react because any response she gives you might seem exaggerated. And over time, this kind of behavior eliminates respect. People start to distance themselves, to close off, or even avoid deeper conversations. Knowing how to measure the tone of your speech is an essential skill for anyone who wants to convey a better image. This is something I cover in my Etiquette and Good Manners course, which helps with everything from posture to first impressions. It covers proper communication in different contexts, social interaction, and also table etiquette, so that you can avoid embarrassment and convey elegance in any situation and in any relationship. If you want to improve your image, gain more credibility, and feel more confident in the way you communicate and behave, this course was truly created for you. To see more, just point your screen at the QR code that appears on the screen or click the link in the description. You'll be able to access our website and check the information to secure your spot today. You can be sure that this kind of learning will transform your image and open doors for you both in your social life and in your professional life. The ninth mistake is staying silent for too long after the other person finishes speaking. No reaction, no response, no sign that you're listening, This leaves the person confused and immediately insecure. She starts to wonder if she was clear, if she said something inappropriate, if she said too much, or if what she said just wasn't important. This happens a lot in delicate conversations when someone shares something personal and gets only an awkward silence in response or in professional situations. When the person asks a question or shares an idea and on the other side there's no reaction at all, even if you're thinking about it, the other person doesn't know that. So, a simple response, a brief comment like, "I understand, that makes sense," or "let me think a little more about that," it already shows attention, respect, and care for the person who is speaking. Total silence without any sign is almost never polite. Another similar mistake is always responding in a vague or monosyllabic way. Answers like, yeah, mm-hmm. They show a lack of interest. When this happens repeatedly, the conversation loses its rhythm, loses depth, and the other person starts to feel discouraged. In everyday life, this happens a lot when someone is sharing something important and only gets short answers with no follow-up. The person talks, shares, gets involved, and on the other side, They notice real interest, even if you don't have much to add. It's about showing that you're listening. A brief question or even a phrase like, "Oh, I understand what you're saying," or "I can imagine how that must have been," makes all the difference. It completely changes the dynamic of the conversation. It's not about talking a lot, it's about showing presence. Elegant communication is also about knowing how to respond in a minimally engaged and respectful way. And have you noticed that many times people feel uncomfortable not because of what you say, but because of the way you respond? Here's an invitation to watch the next video that appears on the screen, but before that, click the link in the description. Check out all the information about my etiquette and good manners course. Take this moment to secure your new transcript, and I'll be waiting for you there. Thank you so much, and see you next time.